Forget everything Hollywood taught you about Vikings because almost none of it survives contact with the actual evidence. Today, we're tearing apart the single most mythologized culture in history, and what's underneath is honestly stranger than the horned helmets. Let's start with the biggest lie: horned helmets. Not one surviving Viking helmet, not one out of every archaeological dig from Norway to Newfoundland has horns on it. The image came from a 19th century costume designer working on a Wagner opera 3 centuries after the Viking Age ended. Real Viking helmets were simple iron caps, sometimes with a nose guard, because horns on a helmet in actual combat is just handing your enemy something to grab. Now here's where it gets interesting. The raiders and nothing else reputation. Most Norse people during the Viking Age, roughly 793 to 1066 AD, were farmers. Full stop. Barley, rye, cattle, sheep. Raiding was a seasonal side hustle for a subset of ambitious young men, not a national lifestyle. Picture this. The same guy terrorizing a Northumbrian monastery in June was back home mending fences and arguing about crop rotation by September. And the hygiene thing. This one surprises people every time. Archaeologists have pulled combs, tweezers, ear-cleaning spoons and razors out of Viking graves in huge numbers. English writers at the time actually complained that Norse settlers were washing too often and combing their hair too much, which apparently made them dangerously attractive to English women. Let that sink in. The dirty savage stereotype has it exactly backwards. So why does the brutal barbarian image dominate anyway? Because almost everything we know from written sources comes from the people they raided: monks, Christian chroniclers. The guys watching their monastery burn were not exactly writing balanced ethnographies. It's like judging an entire nation's culture solely off enemy propaganda. Of course, it's going to be one note and terrifying. Let's talk about the raid that built the myth. Lindisfarne, 793 AD, a monastery on a tidal island off the English coast, undefended, wealthy, and completely unprepared. Norse raiders hit it fast, took what they could carry, killed some monks, enslaved others, and vanished before any real resistance could form. One chronicler at the time described it as blood pouring from the altar itself. Dramatic? Sure. But it's also the single data point that launched 1,000 years of stereotype. Here's the underdog math nobody talks about, though. The raiders themselves were often wildly outnumbered by the societies they hit. A raiding crew might be 40 to 60 men in a couple of long ships. They weren't conquering armies, they were small, fast, opportunistic strike teams, betting everything on speed and shock before local forces organized. When that bet failed, as it often did, raiders died in the mud a long way from home with zero backup coming. Now here's a name worth knowing: Ahmad ibn Fadlan, an Arab diplomat and writer who actually travelled among the Volga Vikings, Norse traders who'd pushed deep into what's now Russia. Around 921 AD, he wrote it all down. He described them as physically striking, tall as palm trees, but also filthy in a specific ritual sense, sharing a single basin of water to wash face and hands each morning, which he found disgusting. So even that dirty reputation has a real, oddly specific source. Just not the one people think. And here's your tonal break, because this deserves one. Ibn Fadlan also described a Norse chieftain's funeral that involved sacrificing a slave girl, and at one point, an old woman supervising the ritual was nicknamed by translators as the Angel of Death. which honestly sounds like the villain name from a low-budget History Channel reenactment nobody asked for.